Hey everybody, hi, it's Becky from Power Tools with Thread, and this is day 4 of our Liberty Quilt sew-along. I think we're going to be able to wrap it up today because today is going to be a pretty easy day. I've got the field of blue all done and hanging right behind me. I just kind of pinned it to that panel back there, but to give you guys an idea of what it looks like. You know, it was just an evening of just sitting there and just steadily going at it, nice and slow, and going through all of the things that we learned on day 2 and day 3 to get those together and make them work out. I made some notes of things I want to mention to you. There's been a lot of questions about some stuff, and I kind of want to go over those and cover it so that we can answer any other questions you might have. So there were a lot of questions about on day 1 when I did cross grain cutting. I actually cut parallel to the selvage as opposed to perpendicular to the selvage. And there was some questions about that on cutting cross grain. I think that a lot of us get in a mindset from home ec or garment sewing that you don't do anything cross grain unless the pattern specifically calls for it. And in most situations that's true, but in quilting, it's a little bit different. The grain line of a fabric, when it is taken into consideration for a garment, that is so that it drapes properly. And you get the right drape when you cut it in the direction that the arrows will tell you in the pattern. With quilts, you really don't have a lot of draping. And so unless you are using a quilting cotton to make into a garment, which a lot of people do, then you do need to follow the grain line. But in quilting, that's not necessarily true. And as a matter of fact, in several patterns I have done myself, you'll see it'll say WOF, which is width of fabric, which means cut with the selvage at the bottom and then run it up. Or it'll say LOF, which is length of fabric. And that means you lay out all your yardage with the selvage down here, or up here, as the case may be, and you run your rotary cutter along the whole way there, like that. Because there isn't any draping that goes on where it's got to work just right in quilting, then, you know, for easy flow over the body, then you can get away with cutting parallel to the selvage, which is length of fabric, as opposed to width of fabric. The reason I did it on these is because the minimum length for both fabrics A and B was 18 inches. And so that's why I made it a point to say, okay, I know that this one is smallest, and so I know I have the minimum amount of length that I need. And it worked out just fine as far as my pieces were concerned. So I just want to make that really clear. If you're going to use a quilting cotton for garment construction, it definitely matters which way you cut the fabric. But in quilting, to make a wall hanging or a table topper or even a quilt to cuddle under, you need to make it work for you and make sure that you get all the fabric that you need out of your fabric available to make the pattern. We had some more blade disposal tips. Cheryl wrote me a nice email, and she mentioned that if you have the container that the blade came in, you can actually save that and put more than one blade in those. That same container that single blade came in, if that's how you buy them, you know, singularly, then you can hold up to 10 or even more blades in them if you want to save that one container, and you just mark it used blades on the outside with a Sharpie. And then she uses an empty medication pill container with the same Sharpie for broken needles and used, you know, broken pins and that kind of thing. So those are real good tips as well if you are looking for a container to put your stuff in like that. To put these pieces together now, which are the stripes, the red and white stripes for the flag, I am going to be sewing end to end with a straight seam as opposed to end to end with a diagonal seam. Let me use red, might be better. So I like to use diagonal seams when I make my binding strips for a quilt, and that's where I'll put a strip face up, put the other one face down, and then turn it 45 degrees and stitch like this down from the V to the V. In this particular instance, for these stripes, I will be sewing them facing each other, and if I have an end that is a little bit fuzzy, maybe it's, you know, got some fraying from the fabric prep or whatnot, I'll just back it up a little bit until I've got a nice clean edge right here. I'll sew 1/4 of an inch, and then I will eventually trim that off when I get done. So you use a lot less fabric to attach your strips together if you do it with a straight seam instead of a diagonal seam. In a previous video, I had mentioned that I didn't get real hung up about pressing to the dark side. In this particular video, I am going to press all of my fabrics to the dark, which means when I sew the white and the red stripes together, when it's all said and done, I will put the red on top of the white, because generally the top fabric that goes under the presser foot is more willing to fold over when it comes time to pressing. You can force it the other way. You can do it either way. It just, the fabric wants to roll over the seam line. And so I will be pressing by stitching down with the red on top and folding that up so that the seam allowance is actually behind the red, as opposed to having, you put it here where you can see it maybe a little bit closer, where if you have the white on top, the white, when you go to iron it, you would roll it over and you will see the seam allowance behind the white, and that's not really the look that I'm going for this particular time. Just because I think it's just going to look a lot better to have no seam allowance showing through the white. That's just me personally. You can, you know, if you iron it the other way, it's okay. The world isn't going to come to an end. It'll be fine. I had taken a Craftsy class, and it was put on by Janet Prey, and she's a wonderful garment seamstress and instructor. She owns Islander Sewing Systems, and she talks about how her mother worked in the garment industry and she learned everything from her mom. And one of the things that they do in the garment industry, unless it's couture, is they don't use pins. And so I learned her technique for holding fabric. So to prevent the bottom fabric from being pulled through faster than the top fabric and easing in that extra we had talked about before, what you do is, it's called thumb under and finger on top. And so you will line up the edges. This is what I'm going to do. If you want to pin, please do, but do not sew over your pins, especially if you have a single needle hole plate on your machine. You will break a needle every time because there's nowhere for that needle to go. You will see me doing this, and I will show you up close when we go over to the machine. It is a thumb under, finger on top, and so I hold my fabric like this, and I create kind of an S. That's what I do, thumb under, finger on top. And when you do this, and then you'll see me grab it in the back, and I will guide it through. I will keep it on the diagonal seam tape at the 1/4 inch line down here. It's kind of where I keep my eyes. I don't watch the needle because the needle has a job and it knows what to do. And I'm just going to run it through. And just, you'll see me holding it just like this. I encourage you to give this method a try. I've seen a lot of comments about how quickly I sew, and that's one of the reasons I do get through quilt tops pretty quickly, is because I don't pin a whole lot. If you noticed, except for putting together that thing to get the diagonal points exactly right, I really didn't pin a whole lot in making this quilt. So in a situation like this where all I have to do is run 2 pieces of fabric through the machine, you will see me hold it. Matter of fact, I do it all the time now anyway. It's just a habit that I have gotten myself into where I just get it going and thumb under, finger on top, and just make it go. Now you do have to kind of watch and make sure that your edges are right and the top one doesn't like to drift over. I'll do it like this. I'll do 6 to 8 inches and run it through, stop, move my hands, do some more, move my hands and do some more. And that will prevent your bottom fabric in just about everything that you do, including garment sewing, from getting pulled faster on the bottom than it does on the top. All right, so let's get started and put these together. It's going to be pretty boring for a while. I'm going to sew every single one of these red stripe pieces together. Oh, little bit of trivia here that I wanted to share with you guys. Lots of questions about the flag and why I am changing over the bottom stripes, if it was flown horizontally, over to the other side of the flag because I plan on hanging it vertically. So would you believe that is actually US code that is required? The field of blue will always hang at the flag's right. The flag's right, which is up here. So if you have, where's the pattern? So if the flag is horizontal like this, that is correct because the field of blue is in the flag's uppermost right corner. This picture is just done this way so it would fit on a 4x6 card, okay? Villa Rosa Designs was not being disrespectful to our flag in any way, shape, or form, but it had to fit on a 4x6 card because that's how they do them. Anyway, so I will be taking these stripes right over here and I will put them on the other side of the flag field of blue so that the field of blue will be in the uppermost right corner. When the flag is taken in, if it is hoisted down a flagpole, the field of blue is always at the top and it comes down last. And then if it is hung vertically and it is hoisted up, like off of a deck or off the top of a building, then the field of blue comes away first. And it is because the field of blue holds the place of honor, which is in the upper right corner. So, little tidbit there. Okay, so let's get started and I'm gonna just sew all of these strips together end to end with a straight seam, and then I'm gonna do the white and I'll get back with you. So the way you want to do this is you want your strip face up. You're going to take your next strip, place it face down, match these bottom corners, kind of align the top corners, and then make sure this edge right here aligns up. Do a 1/4 inch seam. And the piece that you just stitched, you want to take the other end of it and just a simple bring it over, face up. And we're going to take the next one, face down. Kind of hard to tell on the white on white. I match the bottom corner, I might match the top corner, and then I match the bottom edge and roll it up under there. This is how I chain piece these strips. Take the last strip on top, it's face down right now, and just give it one layover, and you want it face up. Here's one that has a pattern, so you can see this is face up. I'm going to turn it face down, match the bottom corners, match the top corners, and match the bottom edge. That way I know it's straight, and line it up with my 1/4 inch seam on my diagonal seam tape. I'm going to hold on to it. Sew a 1/4 inch seam. It's upside down, it's face down. I'm going to take the bottom end of it and lay it face up. I will continue to do that through all of the white and all of the red strips. Same process over and over and over. That is assembly line sewing. It makes your sewing efficient and fun because everything comes out just like it should. So in a matter of just a few minutes, I have managed to sew all of the white strips together that will make up the white stripes. I'll take this over to the ironing board and iron all of the seam allowances one direction. Alright, we are ready to sew some stripes together. Let me see, I gotta find the end. So I'm just gonna sew all of my red and white stripes together as far as I can, and then we'll have extra red left over for another row or two on opposite ends as needed. And like I said before, I'm gonna sew with red on top because that way it is going to want to go to the dark side when I iron it a little bit better. And this is going to get monotonous, and I got a bunch of bobbins ready, so here we go. Look at that bleeding that happened during the preparation process. I think it was only this fabric too, and because I only, this is like a confetti, I only see this bleeding on this particular strip or set of strips of that pattern. And if possible, you don't want your seams to match. You want them to be pretty scrappy. So I didn't follow my own advice, and my seams are coming out pretty close together, so much so that it would look like I missed. Instead of them being super scrappy, it'll look like I didn't get them together like they should have been, and they're not supposed to be. So I only just started, and I'm going to go ahead and undo this. I want to show you the proper way to use a seam ripper. So this is one of the seam rippers that my husband makes. This is a piece of acrylic, and this is the aqua blue and green. And one end of this is a stiletto, which is great for making bags if you ever do that. But you know, it helps to get the fabric under that presser foot real nice. But these are great because they feel so good in your hand. So to use a seam ripper, one end of your seam ripper has a point and the other end has a little red ball. And the purpose of the ball is not to cut the fabric. And so the way I like to use this is you want to place the fabric flat down, and I take it and just put it right in here, and I press the ball down toward the base of the fabric and hold it right here to give it a little tension and just push. See that? Look how nice that is. And you get a little bit of threads there. So I put the sharp point to the inside, the ball to the outside toward the seam allowance, turn the ball down and just push. If you meet a little resistance, you can stop and realign. But look at this. So I'm going to be able to do this. When you get near an intersection, it'll hang up just a little bit, but look at that. Done. Yeah, and it hung up because we got near the end, and there. So yeah, I just unpicked a couple of feet of stitching in a matter of seconds, which is awesome. These things are amazing. You can get these on our store site at powertoolswiththreadstore.com. We've sold hundreds of them, you guys, and everybody loves them. I keep mine on a, I made a little phone pillow that I actually don't use a whole lot, and it fits perfect in there. So That's where I keep mine. But I'm gonna realign just a little bit here. Couple it in like half. So that, there, that's a little better. Oh, the reason I stopped is because I'm out of bobbin. Duh. I have put a link to this machine below. This is one of the best piecing machines I've ever come across. It's really what it's designed for. PQ is, the Q is for quilting. So there's a baby lock version, it's called the Jane, and there's a Juki version. I don't know the number of that, but these machines are pretty awesome. Significantly increased my piecing accuracy. And my enjoyment of the process as a whole. And it will create a bobbin in about 24 seconds flat. This thing is on fire. As I showed you before, can you check this out? Thumb under, fingers on top. It's exactly how I sew all the time. Now when I sew, I don't watch the needle, and I think as a beginner there is a tendency to want to watch the needle. Don't worry about the needle. The needle has a job, it knows what it's supposed to do. Your job is to keep the fabric straight as it goes in. And for me to do that and keep the fabric straight, I keep my eye when I first start the stitch, the run, I put my eye right here on the edge of the 1/4 inch seam tape, and I let my eye follow to about right here, and then I stop and I do it again. I really rarely watch the needle. The needle knows what it's doing. It's me I gotta worry about. So this is boring. I'll see you guys back here in a bit. All right, so now I need to iron this to the dark. I'll go ahead and start on this end. Okay, so we are in the home stretch of this fabulous quilt. What I did was I sewed my 2 long sets of strips of red and white together, and I just sewed, all right? And then I ironed all of the stripes to the dark, and what that means is that my seam allowance back here folds over toward the red. So on step 6, it tells you to subcut your big long piece into 2 different subcut section sizes, and one of them is about twice as long as the other. Now when you sew your stripes together in your subcut pieces, keep in mind it is not red, white, red, white. It is red, red, white, white. Red, red, white, white. So they will go like this. Now, if you have pieces, like if I were to sew these 2 together, these 2 match, they're from the same fabric, you know, it's okay, but if that bothers you, then switch it out and make it as scrappy as you want. That is the whole point of this. So if I switch this out so these don't match, now these match. Whatever. You know, I'm not going to kill myself over it. I'm just going to go ahead and put it together and make it work. I am going to take these longer ones. This is the subcut that is longer. And I am going to swap that over so that the field of blue is, where's my paper? Right on the paper that was in the download. So the field of blue needs to be in the position of honor, which is in the flag's upper right corner. This is actually going to be the 2 stripes of white, and I will take it from down here and switch it around and sew it here. I'll show you what I mean when I get to that point. Also, let me touch on strings. Do your long armor a favor, or if you're going to long arm it yourself or embroider it yourself, you guys want to get your strings cleaned up as much as possible. There's nothing worse than going along thinking everything's fine and then seeing a nice little red shadow underneath that white. So if anything, just be sure to get the red strings out from underneath the white, because that's awful when that happens. And long armors hate that. And generally a good long armor will go ahead and clean all that out before they put the top on, but every little bit of help from you is much appreciated, believe me. So I am going to sew these together because of the edge of the red stripe that is on the edge of the quilt. I need to take some of these reds and I need to sew an extra strip right here along the top of red to make sure that I've got double red on the outside edge as the pattern calls for. Hey you guys, I'm gonna own this. I had sewn the red and white together completely. I'm gonna have to pick out one of these sets on the long one, because right next to the field of blue it's white white. And so I'm gonna have to unpick one of these and then sew this white section onto this white section right here. Sorry about that. All right, if you have any little stray ends that are jagged on these long pieces, then just take your ruler and get them straight as possible. You can match the seam lines and make sure they are straight with the lines on your ruler and just clean those up. So this is the long piece that is going to go. So we've got white white on the bottom of this one, and I say white white because it's 2 rows of white, and this is going to go like this. Remember, this is the top of my flag up here. I'm going to hang it vertically, so these 2 white stripes need to go on this side of the field of blue, and then I need to clean up this edge as well. Let me get this out from under here. Don't cut that in half. Boy, that'd be awful. I have strings. Oh my goodness, I have, my shirt has strings. Everything's got strings. That's okay. So on this long piece here, I am going to go ahead and, normally what I do when I clean these up is I will look for the shortest piece of the bunch, all right? And then I will try to, so the shortest one of the bunch is this little white one right here. And look, I've got some extra, almost ½ an inch right there. But I want to measure and make sure my lines are even with the ruler and the seam lines. So I don't care, because if I pull this, then it, you know, to pull this under the ruler, then it's going to be wonky, and we don't want that. So I'm making sure I've got an even bottom edge down here, and my ruler lines are straight with the seam lines, and I think that this is okay. So I'm going to clean this up. Let's see, make sure those are straight. Yeah, that's all good. This is even straight across here. Y'all, I don't know why that happens. It just does. Okay. If you are doing it so that the quilt will be hung horizontally or will be seen horizontally, then you want to turn your field of blue just like it says in the pattern. And this piece will go over here like this. And this piece will go under here like this. Refer to video 3 to match up. Oh, look at that. It's perfect. Refer to video 3 to match up on this. Regardless of the way you're doing it, you've got to match up those points. I will be sewing it from this side so I can hit, I have to mark my landing strips and hit all of those. So I'm going to go and pin this right now. Sorry for the noise. My lawn guy, aka my husband, is outside blowing grass around. All right, I need to put this center point right here. I have marked my landing strip. This is the middle of the blue field of blue, and I want to make sure that I get it in this seam right here, 1/4 of an inch in. And I have this little 1/4 inch ruler. Put that on there. Mark this. That's where I want that to hit. So I've marked a 1/4 inch seam here. I'm just going to do a rough pin. Just a rough pin right now to mark center. I'm going to pin my ends. Pin center first, then pin your ends. My husband's wandering around out there with a leaf blower or weed eater or something. If you can get your seams to nest, then do. If you can't, don't kill yourself over it. You do that just like before. You go in one side of the seam and out the other. All right, let's see. I think I can live with that. Perfect. Perfect. Yep, these are good. The technique works, guys. I mean, I've never seen anybody teach it like that. It just works. I'm loving it. Okay, when you get ready to sew on the long section to either the bottom or the side of the field of blue, you need to make sure that you measure to the field of blue first. So I would normally start sewing up here on this end because I need to measure, I need to be able to hit my landing strips in my field of blue. Well, I don't know what all happened, but I got about I got a short, it's short right there, okay? Not a big deal on this end. It would be a big deal on this end because you don't want to run short on your 1/4 inch seam allowance that you need down here to match all that up. So I am going to measure from the end of the field of blue first. And if you have to, you know, straighten that out in the end on the other side, that is not going to be problematic. So I'm just rough pinning the field of blue to the long section so that I know for a fact I've got enough of this long section to meet the end. And we will square it all up, and in the end you will not be able to tell. If it ends up being 69 instead of 70, then so be it. All right, here we are at the end. This is it. That was the last seam. Let's go iron it out. Oh, it looks great. Yay! All right, you guys, we're all finished. I am so pleased with how this came out. I really, really enjoyed doing this with you, and I'm so glad you joined me. I think it turned out just absolutely gorgeous, and it was so much fun. I have had several of you ask me if I have a Patreon account because you would like to make a donation for my time and trouble making this video. And you guys, honestly, it's no trouble. I would have sewn it anyway. I was just happy to bring you along with me. The answer is no, I do not have Patreon. However, on my calendar of events page, on my blog, powertoolswiththread.com, around each one of the sew-alongs, there is a link for donations if you are so inclined. And if not, I'm just glad you joined me because I love to teach. It's something that it just makes me happy to do that. And for those of you that this is your first quilt, I want to congratulate you. I am so proud of you for jumping in and doing this. And you are going to have a quilt that you will have for years and years and be proud of to show. All right, you guys, that's it. I really thank you for joining me on this sew along, quilt along, and hope you can join me. My next one is going to be the last week of April. That is for the Kimberbells Red, White, and Bloom. And it is an adorable wall hanging. If you are interested in getting yourself some Power Tools with Thread t-shirts, those are on our store site, powertoolswiththreadstore.com. All right, you guys, that's it. Thank you for joining me, and we will talk to you soon. Go sew something. Bye.